Welcome back, everybody. I have a distinct pleasure and an honor to speak to somebody who we've all been watching for the last number of decades. We won't get into specifics here. It's Mr. Casey Sander. Please welcome.
Welcome. Well, thank you, Alan. And it has been 40 years in LA.
Knock on wood. It's great. I mean, you've had a really wonderful career, which I want to ask you all about in a few minutes. Looking at your IMDb credits, I live on IMDb Pro. That's kind of my my go-to, and I see 138 there. After this, not that it makes a difference, but you'll have another one. So you're on your way to 150, which I'm sure you'll get there very quickly with your projects.
Well, yeah. Well, between an extensive commercial background and then radio and as far as voiceovers and so forth, we're over 300. So
Yeah.
it just adds up, It's
Yeah.
just adds. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky.
Well, there's obviously an element of luck in it, but usually in this industry, if you've been around for that long and you're that successful, it has something to do with talent as well, which you have a lot of. I've watched you in many things, including, I'm a big fan of Silicon Valley, so I I love your scene on Silicon Valley. It was just, well, not one scene, your episode that you were on.
Yeah.
So you get to see a real diversity because you're a wonderful dramatic actor who has a very strong presence. And we've seen you in 16 Blocks. We've seen you in a lot of places where you play really strong characters. Don't Mess with Me, and you kind of look like Steve Austin's, Cold Stone Steve Austin's older brother. So there's that energy. And by the way, right now, I hope you don't mind me saying, but with a beard, you kind of remind me of Christopher Lloyd. So so there's that energy there as well. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, there's more than one person has said that, and I actually was shopping at Home Depot in Thousand Oaks, California, and ran into Christopher Lloyd and Michael Lesak.
Okay.
Was our original director on Grace Under Fire, and Michael Lesak had done a lot of Taxi, and he talked to me about Chris Lloyd, and I'd never met him before, and our paths just never crossed, and I happened to run into him at Home Depot, and I introduced myself, and I said, I just have to tell you, there's an awful lot of people that think you and I look alike. And in person, if you put us right next to each other, we don't look alike, and maybe the camera does something, and he looked at me and he goes, I don't see it. and I said, neither do I. And I wished him well, and off we went. So he was a very nice man.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. But you're doing a really good good imitation. So there's definitely something to it. Although speaking energy wise, and oh my God, his name escapes me right now. I'll come back to this because you remind me of another amazing actor that with your beard. When he has a beard, there is that same kind of energy coming through. I'll come back to this. Anyway, so. As I was kind of saying, we've seen you in a lot of dramatic parts, but then we see you in tremendous comedic parts, and it looks like you're having a lot of fun. Big Bang Theory, playing the dad is really fun. I enjoy those episodes. So I know you started out, and we'll come back even earlier to how you got into acting, but when you decided to become an actor and you came to LA. I know you started at Groundlings. So did you start out more in comedy and then drama naturally kind of that's where the industry put you? Or where did you want to be yourself?
Well, I came to LA, not knowing anybody and not knowing anything really about the industry. I had fallen into acting in theater in college, and actually, it's a crazy story, but I was going to go into broadcasting, and I thought sports broadcasting because my background is I was a professional baseball player for the California Angels in their minor league system. And then I got hurt, I got released, and I got a scholarship to go back to college and play football. So when I was in college, I took an acting class thinking it would help me loosen up on the microphone. And I was doing the play-by-play for the college basketball team, which, by the way, we won the national championship that year for Division II, University of Puget Sound. And one of the requirements for this acting class was that you had to audition for a play to find out what the nervous audition process was like. So I auditioned for this play with no intention of being in the play, and I got cast. And then to top it all off, it was Waiting for Godot, and I was played Lucky, this manservant, and I was at that time I was 6'3", 235-pound running back, and half man, half horse, whatever Lucky is, right? And so I had no intention of doing this, and I'll never forget, my mother said, "Honey, when a door opens, walk through it. You never know what's on the other side." And I said, "Mom, I'm not an actor. I'm a running back. My goal was to try to become a better and better football player." And anyway, I fell into acting, and it was perfect because all my life I'd been an athlete, and theater and acting is very much like athletics. The camaraderie of the team is just like the camaraderie of the cast. To be a good actor, you have to be disciplined. To be a good athlete, you have to be disciplined. You have to go to the weight room. You have to do your training when no one tells you. As a performer, as an actor, you got to break down your character. You got to memorize your lines. You've got to figure out the little nuances that make it come to life. And that's discipline, to put your time and energy into that. It's the same thing as athletics. Opening night jitters, same thing as pregame jitters. Getting that first laugh or walking out on the stage, that's just like getting the first hit in a game. I mean, it is so similar. And then the joy when the production is over or the game is over, and the camaraderie once again it just fit. It just fit. And so in college, I did multiple plays over a period of years, and I really found I enjoyed it. I loved it. And some old guys that the college used to hire or offer roles to them. They were older gentlemen, professional, seasoned actors, equity members who would come to the college to play the older characters. They just didn't want to put a college kid in a bunch of gray makeup and so forth, put hair on. And these older gentlemen suggested that I do something with this. And I listened to them because they were old, wise, had spent 30, 40 years as performers themselves. And that was the drive that made me think maybe I should do something with this. And the next year I taught high school English and I coached college football. And then at the halfway point of that year, I decided I was going to drive to Hollywood or Los Angeles and give it a shot. And that's how it started.
Wow. It's amazing. And there are a number of things that I applaud you for. First of all, you listen to your mom and you listen to other actors, which again, the kids, and I certainly remember myself being younger. Listening to adults was not necessarily something that we were inclined to do. So the fact that you did is speaks highly of you. I did just, I know that you played shortstop, so I was trying to figure out. I'm sure people told you that at that time you're pretty big for a shortstop.
Yeah.
So it's the running back and the shortstop. That is an interesting combination.
Well, I was just before the Cal Ripken era
Yeah.
and A-Rod and those guys, believe it or not, Alex Rodriguez I think is 6'4" and Cal Ripken's 6'4" or 6'5". When I played pro baseball, the idea, the mindset was still you used to have your second baseman and your shortstops up the middle were always Latins or they were littler, smaller individuals. And they would sacrifice the power as the hitter for a great fielder. Well, there's no reason a guy 6'4" can't be a great fielder if he happens to be a terrific athlete. And therefore, you're getting the power of his bat. You're getting a better hitter, per se, than a little punch and Judy guy. And so when I got into pro baseball, they immediately converted me to first base and outfield because they were looking for more power. And unfortunately, when I played pro baseball, I suffered 3 major injuries in 3 years. I got hit right in the eye, shattered my orbit. That hurt my first year. The second year, I tore a piece of knee cartilage. That took care of that year. I broke a bone in my back in a collision at second base in winter ball. That kind of damaged my third year. And then I was very, very fortunate. I got hired by an independent team in Seattle, where I'm from, called the Seattle Rainiers. And I went to Seattle to play. And while I was there was a football coach who had recruited me out of high school, and I turned all the football scholarships down because I wanted to play pro baseball. And in those days, if you took a college scholarship for football, it lowered your draft status for baseball, for the pros, because you had a bargaining chip.
Yeah.
If they drafted you, they knew at that time $20,000 or so was a college education, 20, 30,000. And so that gave you a value. And so if they took you, they knew they had to bargain against that. And so in my case, I gambled and I turned all the scholarships down. And then luckily I was drafted. I was drafted in the 10th round by the Angels, and I signed and I went off and played pro baseball. It didn't work out for me, but in the long run, it worked out that a gentleman named Paul Walraff, who was this head football coach at this beautiful little Ivy League type school called the University of Puget Sound, little 3,000 student on campus, wonderful Division II school, called me up and said, I came to your game last night. And I was like 0 for 4 and a couple of weak ground balls. And I'm sorry, coach. It's nice to hear from you. He goes, I have a full ride if you want to come back to college and play football. I know baseball's not working out. And it was a lifeline for me. It was because pro baseball was not working out. When I got hit in the eye, I never hit well after that. My minor league batting average was in the low 200s. And so when he offered me a chance to get my education and go back and play a sport that I loved, football, even though I'd been away from it for 3 years, I jumped on it. And it was the best decision I ever could have made, not only to be part of Paul Walraff's life and make great teammates and friends, lifelong friends, but it got me into acting because that's the road that took. And I never would have, you never think something like that's going to happen.
Right.
So that's where it started. Now, back to your original question. When I came to LA, I was a bartender in Seattle. I had learned the craft of mixology, and I took that with me to LA. I got a job right away, tending bar, and I worked 6 nights a week for about 4 or 5 months in order to bankroll myself. I then went to a normal four or five shift schedule. I did that for 7 years, and I kept a bartending job, but I started to pick people's brains. How do you do this? How do you get into this business? And so on and so forth. And one day, and this is a crazy LA story, but there was a girl who had dropped out of my college. She was going to be an actress, and I happened to contact her in Los Angeles, and she said, my agents want me to do a scene for them. I'm not getting any work, and they want to see me perform. Would you do it with me? And I said, sure. So we did a little scene from Where's Tommy Flowers Gone? And I got a call from her agents, and they said, we'd like to sign you. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. What about Ruth? And they said, well, we're going to let her go. And I, not knowing the business, I felt like I stole her job.
Yeah.
Like I stole her. And she called me up after she got the news, and she was very happy for me. And I literally was almost in tears because I felt like I stabbed her in the back. And she just shook her head and she said, you know, you are so green. I'm a girl. You're a boy. We will never go out for the same part. We will never, ever be confrontational that way. And she said, Casey, you just don't get it. And I didn't get it. I didn't get it. But she was kind enough to wish me well. And through those agents, they recommended an acting class. I started in that class, and I stayed with that class for almost 4 years, sometimes a couple times a week, sometimes once a week. But during that class, a friend of mine, Tom Chalice, from Pittsburgh, from Beaver Falls, Beaver, Pennsylvania. Tommy came to me and he said, I saw a group last night called the Groundlings, and you belong there. You've got to go check this out. So the Groundlings, if you don't know, the Groundlings is an improv theater on Melrose Avenue. And the original Saturday Night Live cast had Lorraine Newman. Lorraine Newman was a groundling. And the school itself puts on, they have shows on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Terrific teaching school of the art of improv. And the amount of people that have come through there is astronomical. But I happened to hook up with a group that was coming through. Phil Hartman was already established, but in my group was my dear friend, John Lovitz. And John and I, and this particular little group that I hooked up with, there was like 11 incoming students in the what was it called? The advanced class. I got thrown into the advanced class, had a great scene night, but I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing that well. And they said, we'd like you to take this class over. And I said, honestly, I want to go back one level. I want to go down to the intermediate class because I'm really good on game night, on scene night. I just rose up to the occasion. You know, it's the old sports thing, you know, like it's game day, the juices are flowing. But I was a beat behind everybody. I was a beat behind. I knew I was a beat behind. The joke would come out of there, the ideas would come out of them like this, and I was a split second behind. And I knew that that was training. And so I went back to the intermediate class, took that class, then moved back up to the advanced class. And as I did that, I eventually moved into this group called the Sunday Company, which was not the main company, but the Sunday Company. And in that group, 11 out of the 13 or so people that were in that group, including my good friend John Lovitz, but went on, 11 people out of that group went on to make a living in the business. And now that's really something. And I happen to have a great group. I mean, I've Jay Kogan, who Jay Kogan has about 7 or 8 Emmy Awards, but as a writer, the Groundlings was great for training people, but not all of them went in front of the camera. Many went to writing. Don Woodard, Jay Kogan. Jay was one of the original Simpson creators. He's got Emmys from Frasier. He's got Emmys from, I don't know, 5 or 6 different shows as a writer. John Lovitz and myself stayed in front of the camera. Mindy Sterling was in that group. Mindy played Frau Brucker, not Frau Brucker. Oh gosh, what's her name? Anyway, she was in the Austin Powers movies, the crazy German woman.
Yeah.
That's Mindy. And so we all came along. Kathy Griffin was in that group. So we all came along in this one little package. And then from there, that was where you would have scene nights and industry nights, and you would have Sunday company nights. And that was a place where I got exposure to casting directors. They would come to the shows, and I never looked like your typical comedian per se. I kind of had I'm losing all my hair now, but I kind of had this leading man type look that could do comedy. And that's a hard nut to fill. So for me, I never looked at it. I was not perceptive enough to say, oh, this is a great combo. I just wasn't that way. I've always been an extrovert. I've always been funny. I've always enjoyed comedy and the ability to laugh. I just happened to be 6'3", 230 pounds, and now I'm, not that same football size, but I've always been like that. So that's how the training, if you haven't, for those that are watching this, if you've never taken an improv class or been involved in improv, please do yourself the favor of doing it, because everything is improv. Everything, the way we live our lives every day is improv. What we're doing right now is improv. But the one thing that the Groundlings instilled in me was trust your instinct. Because if you're an improver and you don't trust those crazy thoughts and those crazy words that are bubbling up inside that you're going to now put out there, you're lost. You're a beat behind. You're 2 beats behind. The joke is stale because it should have landed 2 beats ago. And improv and the Groundlings training made me trust my dramatic instincts as well. So as an actor, it's really, really important to, when you break down your characters, when you read those initial lines, those first thoughts that you have are the honest thoughts, the most important thoughts. Those are the ones you have to trust. And that is improv in itself, is you have to trust, because when you're on stage with no script and this person all of a sudden says something, and of course in the Groundlings, never say no, never deny, add information, right? And that's trust. Here it comes, bing, bang, bing, and that's where it started.
Wow. Yeah. I know from the improv perspective, I know how important that is, because that's where my training started. My training started at Second City in Chicago. and I did a year plus at Second City, went the A through E plus some other programs. But that idea of just being open and saying the first thing that comes to mind, that took some getting used to, because the writer in me is trying to plan things out. I'm going to put this hook in, I'm going to plant this seed, I know where it's going. You can't do any of that. So it took me a while to just be open and be accepting and be there, and whatever thing comes into my mind goes. And I use that to almost get into the conservatory program at Second City, because I don't sing. I love singing. I am not good at it. And I thought, you know what? Why not? I'm going to audition for the Second City, the musical improv conservatory program.
Mhm.
So I went to audition. I'm sitting there, before it, and I kind of asked the young lady that's taking everybody's names. I said, what's going to be the kind of the process? She said, well, you'll get on stage, they ask for your name, things like that, and then they'll give you a name of a celebrity, and you have to come up with a song on the spot. They'll have some two-person scene and a three-person scene. Okay, so she gave me the basic parameters, and I'm a poet, I'm a songwriter, I'm a lyricist, so I'm like, let's do this. I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of coming up with little songs for Barack Obama, for kind of all sorts of celebrities, politicians, and in my head I keep on, that instinct keeps on saying Brad Pitt, Brad Pitt, Brad Pitt. I'm like, stop! I'm writing this song about Barack Obama, or I'm writing this song about I don't even remember the other celebrities, but so I write this and I keep hearing it again, Brad Pitt, Brad Pitt, Brad Pitt. I said, okay, fine. I need to get this out of my head. I'm going to write Brad Pitt. So I wrote the thing about Brad Pitt. I moved on to other celebrities. We get on stage, introduce yourself. What's your favorite sandwich? And then they kind of talk to each other, and they're like, okay, so we decided the name of the celebrity. You have a few minutes to write a song. Brad Pitt. So Brad Pitt was the name that they wanted me to write the song on. And I'm standing there laughing to myself, thinking, wait a second. I have some intuitive abilities. I know that. But this is improv. Does that mean that I cannot be good at improv because I'm an intuitive? So then it's like, then my problem became is that they only wanted 4 lines and I wrote 8. So I needed very quickly to kind of put the things together because the punchline was at the end. So that was my thing. But the whole idea of trust the information that comes, that has played out throughout my life, not just acting career. So I resonate with what you just said tremendously.
Yeah. Well, improvisational singing, I did as well at the Groundlings. And one of the things that we used to have a group called the Mint Cadillacs, which was 4 white guys in really bad mint green tuxedos with the Mr. T jewelry set that we bought at the Halloween store.
Perfect.
And we came out and we would do a Temptations takeoff. But the difference between the Second City situation and our situation is you'd get a suggestion from the audience, lights down, lights up, here we come on stage, and you had to create it, no writing. You had to create it truly improv on the fly. And some nights it killed, and some nights we weren't real good. but you had to trust. You had to trust.
Yeah.
And you have to, and the other thing that is so important about improv is you have to listen. And listening is a real key to being a good actor, because it's not just about the old, when people first start out, I got to memorize my lines. Yes, you do. That's part of the business. But you got to hear what the other person is saying, because you must be engaged and hear that, because that dictates how you say your line. And so in improv, you have to listen, because you have no idea what is coming out of the mouth of the person across from you. And that is what makes really good improv and really good acting, is two people in a conversation where they're listening.
Yeah. I started playing improv games with my kids. So, when we're in the car and we're driving and it's a long drive, it's improv games. So that's kind of, I got them to it, and then they started taking some classes, and they're already already ready because they know all these games. I think you have a daughter, if I'm not mistaken. Have you done improv games with her?
Not really.
Yeah.
We've never. I have a son and a daughter, and we've never done that. Although my daughter did go into the business and became an actress and a model for a while, and she's dropped out of the business now and gone into sales. But she had a nice little career for a while, more on the modeling end of it than the acting end. She's done a few things, but nothing major. Um, but but the the idea of children with improv is terrific, and there's some really good schools or classes, I guess I would call them, that I have heard of in LA. I personally never went that route with kids or anything, but I have some friends who have done that, and their kids absolutely love it because it's playtime. It's playtime.
My kids certainly enjoy it, and then they get into accents because I love accents,
I
and
do.
then we irritate my wife. So that also is a joy in itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Going back to improv for a second, or not improv, we're talking about improv. Going back to Silicon Valley,
Oh,
some of the scenes are. It seemed like I don't know how many times I would break during the taping of the scene when all of Richard was, I'm Richard, and then everybody started to say their name. Like, this is such a great game. So I know the actor, Middleditch. He is wonderful improviser. I don't know if you saw the special that he and not Ben Schwartz. Is it Ben Schwartz? Yeah, I think Ben Schwartz. Middleditch and Schwartz, where they do long form improv. They're outstanding. So going to that Silicon Valley episode, did you have any chance to improv because you were working with a lot of people who are into it?
I did not,
Okay.
and it was very interesting to me when we shot that show.
Yeah.
That was the third episode of the entire run of the show, and they had, and I. This is the same thing that happened when I did Home Improvement years ago. I also did the third episode of that show when it first started, and it's interesting when you do a show like that because they don't know what they have yet. It hasn't aired. The audience hasn't responded. So you're really trusting the words on the page, and you're really trusting that what you're doing is correct and it's going to work and it's funny. Now, the difference between those two shows is Home Improvement was shot in front of a studio audience, and Silicon Valley is what they call single camera comedy, where you shoot it with no studio audience, and so your jokes land in a vacuum. There's nobody can laugh on set, so this is funny. Here it comes, boom, there it is, but nobody's laughing. But you know it's a joke. You got to believe it's a joke and so forth. But no, I got no improv on Silicon Valley. Really trusted Mike Judge, who was the head writer on that at the time, and Alec Berg also. But that was Mike's particular show, and the director of it was terrific. And she and Mike, we do a run through of the scene, and I really felt like I knew this character and I knew how I wanted to portray this guy. And this is when you know that your instincts are right and that your delivery is working and so forth. I got no notes the entire 3 or 4 days that it took to shoot it, you'd do a take and you'd look over, and they'd, and keep going, and do more and carry on. And so that, as a performer, that's what you hope for, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with a director coming in and saying, we need a little more of this or a little more of that. That's the reason, the third eye that's out there. You see it one way, maybe the person you're in the scene with sees it another way, or very close. But the third eye, the third person that sees what the camera is seeing, and has that feel of, remember, the director is in charge of the entire circle, the beginning, middle, and end. So, you don't always, in the business, you don't always shoot in sequence. So the first day you go on the set, you may be filming the last day, the last portion of the show, and you have to shoot the last first and the first last, and so forth. Sometimes it takes a little while to get used to that, because you've got to figure out how you're going to lay out your character from the beginning, the middle, the end. And yet your first day on the show, on the set, you're shooting results, let's say. Well, you haven't done anything to create those results yet. So you have to go backwards to create those, set that all up. In my case, on Silicon Valley, they were very open to the character that I created, and they felt that guy was absolutely what they saw in their writing and their preconceived ideas of who this guy was. So that's the part of performing, acting, that I really love. Is I love to bring words to life. And there's a saying I heard, you put skin on words. And that is what I do. I put skin on words.
I keep rewriting the title of this episode. It used to be Trust Your Instinct. Now it may be Skin on Words. I keep trying. We'll see.
Well, the written word is fantastic when it's well done and well crafted. And comedy is tricky. Comedy changes, even though it's written. The dynamics of the people. For example, on Big Bang Theory, I'm this much taller than the other actors, and innately there's a joke there. It's funny without saying a word. If myself and Howard Wolowitz are standing next to each other, it's a sight gag. And the written word of comedy is when you put skin on that word, on those jokes, on those lines, just talking back and forth to each other. What the audience sees with those two humans adds to that. It's a bonus. It is so funny sometimes without a word being said. Just the dynamics of the difference in the two individuals that are putting the skin on the words. And for me, I get a big kick out of like with Silicon Valley. I saw that character. I knew that character. And then to go on the set and say, and this is the trust situation. I know this guy. I know who he is. I know how he would react. So when Thomas is playing this character that he does, and now don't forget, I've never seen the show. It hasn't been on yet. I don't know Thomas. I don't know his character. I don't know all the little foibles and little insecurities and the little hitches and glitches that he has. So as a performer, I know where I want to go and what I want to do. But now he's layering in that character and the words that I read that he was going to say were much better once he got a hold of them. And that's the skin on words. That's the human aspect of it. And boy, did that help me. You know, that's that being in the moment and listening and trusting and going, I never saw that word said. And that's the other thing, is the surprise, is everybody interprets things differently. I read his dialogue. I interpreted it this way. By the time it came out of his mouth, boy, was it different than what I thought it might be, and better. And that just, as an improver or a performer, when you hear it said that way, well, that takes you to a different place. And you go, yeah, all right. Yeah. So that was a joy. Yeah.
And Big Bang, I think, is Big Bang multicam? It looks
Yeah.
like a multicam. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you?
And that live audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you prefer, because again, as an improviser, do you prefer to be in front of an audience? Is that as opposed to a single cam?
I do. I do prefer that. And I think that goes back to cutting your teeth in the theater.
Yeah.
Is you can hear the audience breathing, you know, in a theater, in a good theater. When you're on stage, whether it be drama or comedy, you can feel them. You can feel them just out past the arch. And the Groundlings, the improv show, was a 99-seat equity waiver theater. And there's nothing like, and it's always a sellout, and there's nothing like landing a bomb and getting 99 people to explode all at once. And that's a rush. That gives you the energy. Comedy is, in my mind, is just so much better in front of a live audience, as you spend all week rehearsing it. You know where the laughs are. You know what's going to happen, and the joy of show night, of landing that killer line with a 300. Usually the studios are right around 300 in a taping, and to get the response from them is just fantastic. And the other thing is there's always unexpected laughter and with a studio audience. And because you may be, and this is another thing that takes a little time to get used to as a professional, is you're on stage right next to the other actor, but the studio audience is looking at monitors. They're looking at the stage, but they're looking at monitors. And you have to understand the technical end of cutting from camera to camera and what they're seeing. Now there may be a laugh that you never got all week off of a reaction that the camera caught when they looked at the other character. Mm-hmm. And all week your timing has been this, but you have to hold. You have to hear that audience. You have to hold. You have to know when to hold. And you don't know when you're on stage, when you're performing in front of a live audience, what those camera shots are. You have to feel that. Yeah. And that's something that takes a little bit of practice. And there's really, honestly, no way to learn that except to do it, to get lucky, get a show, get out there and get your feet wet. And That again is part of being in the moment, trusting, and keeping that ear open to the audience.
Yeah, I have not been on a multicam yet, but I did when I went to LA. I'm in Chicago, so when I went to LA last year or the year before that, we went to a taping of A Man with a Plan, which is a multicam, and that was my first time being in the audience and understanding how that whole dynamic works and looking down, and then you as the audience, they're doing their best to ensure, because there are people there that not only feed you, but there are people there to entertain you, there are people there to tell you what the rules and guidelines are, and we see the whole stage. So in that particular show, you see the whole outside of the house, you see inside the house, you see all the rooms, you see where the setup is, you see the 4 cameras that are moving. It is a really, really fascinating experience, and I found that I grew tremendously as an actor. God willing, I'll get to that position where I'll be in a multicam, but now I have a much better feel of what that is like just from being in the audience.
Yeah, it's fun for people to come to a show because they walk in a studio and they all of a sudden they go, "Oh my gosh, there's the kitchen, there's the living room, there's the outdoors, there's a driveway, and yet here's a bedroom." And it's they if a show has been on air for a while, they feel like they kind of know the place. They know the house, because that's the magical thing a little bit about television is you allow it into your home. So you every night, Grace Under Fire, or Home Improvement, or Big Bang, or whatever I did, I'm in your living room. And then, excuse me, they come to a set and they realize, well, wait a minute, this is all one big long stage, and the cameras move and the people move, and it's a eye-opening experience that in a strange way, it's not real. You you have your preconceived ideas of how the house must look and so forth. And let's say there's an upstairs in the house. Well, there's not an upstairs on a TV set. So the upstairs is this swing set way over here. And but the audience always brings the good thing about live TV that I like that is it's a hybrid of theater and television. It's a hybrid in that you have the live audience to give you the live feedback. And I much prefer comedy shot with a studio audience. Much prefer it.
Understand. You've worked on a lot of shows, a lot of films. Is there an actor that stands out from your experience that, from a pure acting perspective, you thought, okay, that's there?
I did some of Tom Hanks's early work. I did the movie Dragnet, and I did the movie Punchline.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time with Tom, about a month and a half it took to shoot the Punchline club sequences. And many, many different if you're not familiar with the movie, mine was Sally Field and Tom Hanks, and it was a stand-up comedian. It was a story of a comedy club and so forth. And there was a scene that Tom Hanks had to do, and this was still pretty early in my career. It was 1987, and I had been in town 7 years. I had done my little share of work at that time. Not a great deal, but I was growing and the roles were getting bigger and bigger and so forth. But I got a chance to watch Tom do this breakdown scene. Now Tom, you know Tom is a comedic actor, right? Well, there's nothing comedic about Saving Private Ryan and so forth. So this was and when I did Dragnet, I knew Tom as a comedic actor. I had one scene with him there, but I never knew him as a dramatic actor. Mm-hmm. And I watched him in the course of a day, and a day on that film was probably 10 to 11 and a half hours, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And I watched him have to do this breakdown scene over and over and over and over, and different angles, different camera shots, different intensity, and repeating the scene as close to word for word. Now, this is another thing that you learn in the business. In a situation like this, he has the freedom to, if his emotions are taken in one way or another, he may change a word here or there, and to keep it real for him. But I watched him do that, and I learned as a young actor that, and Tom and I are about the same age, but I learned as a young actor, watching him do the scene, walk away after the scene was over, take a break while they're changing the camera angles and so forth. But his focus, his ability to, when the scene was over, to put himself in essence, a safe place to stay in that character. He knew exactly what he needed to do, how to go from, in this particular scene, from jovial, comedic, and so forth to a wreck. And that was eye-opening to me, to watch him and see how he protected himself in between takes, how he stayed focused, and how he delivered. With that to me was a eye-opening, and as a younger performer, and that's the only one that just really jumps out in my head. That was great for drama, and I learned a lot about that. But the other person that I absolutely enjoyed every moment around was Tim Allen, and Home Improvement. And Tim, a show takes on the personality of the lead performer in the show. And Tim brought joy and comedy and fun every day to the set, and that made our job, my job, much easier, much more enjoyable. A week, you start rehearsals on a Monday, you film the show on a Friday. So during that rehearsal process, Tim was key at keeping the energy up, keeping the joy up. And the other thing I want to say about Tim is a giving comedian, a giving actor, in that, and I say that with the meaning of, he wants me, you, whoever he's working with, be as funny as you can be as great as you can be hilarious. And this is not always the case. And sometimes with comedians, whatever the gist is in the comedic world, they're threatened. If you get a laugh, they didn't get a laugh, there's a threatening thing there, and that's just wrong. And Tim knew that, and Tim's makeup was you be as good as you can be, and that's part of his confidence as well, because he knew the better you are, the better the show is, and the show is the thing. And Tim never doubted. You know, if you're hilarious, I'm still going to get my laughs. I'm still going to do what I do, and it's just going to make things better. And that was great. And that's not always the case.
No, I really like Tim's work. We still to this day, rewatch this Santa Claus and that whole kind of series. He's wonderful. I really like him. Tom Hanks, I'll just stop. I know that we're kind of we're taking long, and I know that I have 300 more questions for you. So I'll wrap it up with this. First of all, the name of the actor who you remind me of with your beer right now, and kind of the energy and the way that you speak is John Malkovich. So that's what I saw, and the name finally came. The last question that I wanted to ask you is, if you had one advice to give to your fellow actors and those that are younger in the business, what advice would that be?
Everybody is an individual, and everybody has something special that is unique to them. And if I were to read the words and you were to read the words would be the same, but it's the different individual, what you bring to it, that makes it special. And to trust in yourself, trust in your view. And if you're looking at I never looked at acting as saying I want to be a star. That was never my thing. I wanted to be a working actor that had multiple opportunities, and I've been fortunate in that people do see me as comedic, and then okay, you're getting pigeonholed in comedic, but then you do a dramatic role. I think the best thing I've ever done is a Grey's Anatomy. I had a wonderful opportunity to portray a firefighter on that unfortunately passes away at the very, very end, but there's a wonderful arc in that. Now, if you watch that and then you watch Big Bang, it's like, well, here's the yin and the yang of this guy. And the advice that I would give is anybody that's ever tried any of this, you got to believe in yourself. You got to trust that your choices are right. Get some good training as far as find a class, get some improv, because even if you think you're a dramatic actor, as opposed to I don't do comedy, improv is not all about comedy. There's so many valuable lessons to learn there. And for myself, the one thing, two things that I will always say is it taught me to trust my choices and listen. Be a good listener. And if you choose to try to go to LA or New York or Chicago, understand that it's a business. It's a business. Bring your art to the business. Find out how the business works. Pictures, resumes, acting reels, and so forth. And now everything is like this. It's with this COVID situation, all my auditions are self-tape auditions. I don't like self-tape auditions. I'm not good at self-tape auditions, but that is the nature of the business more right now than ever. And when I started in the business, if you went into an audition, there's the writer, the director, maybe a producer or two, maybe 3 or 4 writers, and they're all sitting right there on a couch, and you can get win or lose the job that moment in the room, just talking to people. Hey, how are you? Da 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 da. You know, be professional. But now it's you, a casting director, and a video camera. And now it's not even a casting director, it's you and a video camera. And then you submit, and you submit either through your agent or you submit individually. And so the business is changing. So if I had 100 things to tell, the most important thing is be yourself, be professional, because it's a professional job. It's a job. Be a pro, and believe in yourself. I mean, if you're going to take this gamble, if you're going to take this shot, you got to believe in yourself.
Casey, this has been a real joy. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your wisdom. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. And thanks to everybody for tuning in into another episode of The Love of Acting. Casey's interview is the reason why we do this. And I'm hoping that you're enjoying this as much as I am. Thank you, everybody.